Let's imagine a world where the finest restaurant managed to purchase a chunk of Godzilla's flesh for a high price. Perhaps it fell off when the MUTOs shanked Godzilla in San Francisco. They quickly froze it and transported it to a chef who would prepare Godzilla's meat for you to eat. What would it taste like? Would it taste like chicken, fish,
A lot of fish.
frog's legs, or something new altogether? Let's find out with today's Mythic Science. For food lovers like myself, we can tell the difference from beef, chicken, and fish. But there's probably plenty of meats you've never tried before, like whale, ostrich, or camel, which all taste very different to the food products we're all familiar with. Godzilla would be no different. This meat would be unlike anything currently known to man, and this is due to a few factors. The diet an animal has can have an effect on how the meat tastes. This is why farms decide what the livestock should eat and drink, because it can influence a lot. Think of Wagyu farms where the cows are given beer to affect the flavor. Also, there's several volatile compounds that vary in meat depending on an animal's diet, which can produce different flavors. For example, the grass-fed beef flavor is thought to come from phytins, a product released during the breakdown of chlorophyll, which is high in grass diets. Unlike livestock animals such as sheep or chickens, which eat corn and hay, Godzilla consumes food a little differently. By absorbing radiation and transforming the chemicals into energy, almost like a biological nuclear power station, or in more natural terms, a plant photosynthesizing, taking in carbon dioxide and outputting oxygen. Just as pastures have an effect on the diet of livestock, the radiation would have an impact on the taste of Godzilla. So, what does radiation taste like? Uranium is a tasteless chemical element and would have no effect on the taste of Godzilla's meat. Plutonium and gamma radiation, however, are described as having a metallic taste. Plutonium is found in atomic bombs, which is what Godzilla harvests, and gamma radiation is found in all rocks and soil. This means wherever Godzilla calls home will likely be loaded with plenty of radiation to absorb, and will have an effect on his biology and what his meat would taste like. To make this meal safe to eat, the chef will decontaminate it, but will this change the taste of our Godzilla steak? We'll find out after some more research. Perhaps the most important question is what animal is genetically closest to Godzilla, one that we can serve as the baseline for what the king of the monsters would taste like. Godzilla is millions of years old, from a species that were around before the dinosaurs. Based on his characteristics, it's likely Titanic Creations is a member of the Archosaur clade, a group which includes alligators. The first alligator ancestors evolved some 245 million years ago, so it's likely Titanic Creations split off from a species similar to alligators approximately 200 million years ago and evolved separately to become the giant titan we know today. But they still bear some striking similarities, which is evident by his osteoderm-covered skin, crocodilian-like hands, and aquatic nature. But how does alligator meat taste? Well, we'll wait until the cooking process to dive into that. Godzilla meat would vary in taste and texture depending on the part of the body it comes from. For example, his legs or forearms would be much more tough and lean, since they need all the muscle to support his heavy weight when walking or fighting. His torso would be much more fatty, since that's where all the blubber is stored for energy and warmth in the depths of the ocean where no sunlight hits him. So if you want a lean piece of Godzilla meat, you'd want a cutting from the legs and arms. But if you want a juicier, fattier steak, you'd want a cut from the torso or the tenderloin. Since the muscle is not weight-bearing, it contains less connective tissue, which makes it tender. The protein that defines whether the meat is tough or tender is called collagen. The more collagen there is, the tougher the meat is. It can, however, be broken down by slow cooking. Now, the meat would initially be very hard to cut, since even below his armored skin, his muscle is still resistant to extreme trauma from explosions or Titan attacks. But since this is an isolated piece of flesh, the G cells would have likely died, and its regenerative defense mechanisms would have shut down, making this meat easier to slice through and more susceptible to heat for when it's time to get cooking. Perhaps a high-temperature laser or an industrial bandsaw would be used to precisely cut off a smaller piece of meat. Next up is the cooking phase, which will turn this piece of Titan flesh into an edible, delicious steak. Well, in theory. Godzilla's raw meat should smell mostly of nothing, although it may be a bit acidic. But huge changes will occur during the cooking phase. When meat is cooked, a process called the Maillard reaction occurs between amino acids and carbohydrates, which produces more than 1,000 chemical compounds which are responsible for the sense of cooked meat we love so much. If we cook for longer, whilst retaining the most moisture possible, the collagen breaks down and tenderizes the meat, making the armored Godzilla flesh into something edible. Now imagine you're sat in the restaurant. You've been waiting hours for your meal, and you've paid good money to be the only person in the world to have the privilege of trying the meat of the rarest creature in the planet from the Titanic Gojira. The chef brings you the plate, lifts off the lid, and the first thing you'd be greeted by is an overwhelming and otherworldly taste of metal that's practically burning your nostrils, all whilst you experience the aroma of a rather familiar meat. Alligator meat has been described as tasting like quail, which is similar to chicken thigh meat. You are handed an extra sharp knife, and even after hours of slow cooking, the meat is still very tough to get through, almost like cutting through rubber. When you take your first bite, you are greeted by a new taste: fish. As a creature of the sea, its environment has had an effect on how the meat would taste, and combined with the remnants of the decontaminated radiation, it's even quite sour. The summary of what Godzilla would taste like is a fishy chicken with an overwhelmingly pungent metal taste. Delicious. It's safe to say Godzilla's meat isn't something you'd want to eat. In fact, it's rather disgusting. The fact the king of the monsters has spent its life absorbing radiation has had an adverse effect on how its meat tastes, since the plutonium and gamma radiation it consumes has led to it tasting like a bitter metal. Not even the best lamb sauce could save this dish. Maybe this is all for the best, because if history has taught us anything, if it was tasty, the rich would attempt to hunt down Godzilla for its meat. I'm sorry, Dodo. So there you have it. Godzilla's meat isn't something you'd really want to try. In fact, in all likelihood, it would be quite unpleasant. However, this is just a theory based off other animals and the chemicals within Godzilla. In all reality, there's no way of knowing exactly how the meat would taste. But let me know in the comments below how you think a Godzilla stew would taste. Don't forget to subscribe and stomp the notification button to become a resident of Dangerville today. I've been Alistair, and we'll see you residents in the next one.